Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 001 Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm joined today by my lovely duo of co-hosts. Alex. He's there, I promise.
Hi. Oh no, the microphone wasn't in the right place again.
We
And
should do that
Wyatt.
at some point. We should do that at some point where we're just like, it's like just Ryan and I are like, yeah, we have Alex here too, and then we like have these long pauses where Alex is like supposedly saying something, just to like screw with people.
I could just take the audio channels and cut one out because I do have that.
My impression of a softly blowing
think,
breeze.
I think we have a great idea for an April Fool's prank.
Yep, and we've got Wyatt, he's right over there.
Who perpetually is an April Fool's prank.
Yeah.
The words right out of my mouth, but at least I didn't say it this time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
All right.
I got you.
This is episode number 46. We're going strong, and we're going to be talking about some game mechanics that we like and don't like. But because of course it's Valentine's Day, we're recording it on Valentine's. It's after Valentine's when this comes out, but anyone watching live, you're getting the full Valentine's Day effect. So we're going to have a little fun with our award tonight, and it's going to be best video game couple that are not from the same games. So what I want you to do is to give me a video game character. So both of you pick one video game character, and then whoever the two characters you pick are, that's our video game couple award.
We're shipping video game characters.
Yeah, but you
live?
don't talk about it first, right? So I need both of you to just pick a video game character.
Okay.
Any video game character. It can be goofy, it can be serious, and then
What about Donald?
yeah, it could be Donald Duck because he's in Kingdom Hearts. That's possible. So
Well, you said Goofy. I didn't want to leave him out.
Oh yeah. So in 10 seconds, I want you two to tell me what two characters are, and then we're gonna see if they're a good couple. So we got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Who is it?
Tifa Lockhart.
All right, you got
BT
Tifa.
7274.
Who?
BT from Titanfall
Oh,
2.
okay. Yeah. All right. So we got Tifa and BT, and that's really not that out of place. There's mechs in Final Fantasy.
It is not out of the realm of possibility.
Hey, at least in this relationship, there really is some. You get to really know the internals of your partner. So,
Oh no.
we got.
I don't know. Given
Tifa and
Tifa, I
BT.
still feel
I
like
like where
she's
this is
in the
going.
same role as always.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is going.
Well, Tifa's wearing the pants in that relationship, so
That's not fair, though. BT doesn't have any pants.
exactly. That's why Tifa's wearing them.
Tifa's wearing all of BT,
Yeah.
like
You
a
could say
meat
that
suit made out of metal.
Tifa is inside of BT.
Yeah,
Oh,
Tifa
yeah.
is inside
I
of
can't
BT.
even-
That's how this would work.
I can't finish that sentence.
All right. Moving on into our actual topics. We just had to derail everyone.
I'm gonna have to make fan art of this, Wyatt. You know that.
Yep.
You're welcome.
What have you done to me?
You're welcome.
So there's a few things that happened this week. We actually got some pretty interesting news from across the games industry. Most of it's pretty short, though. So the first bit of really interesting news is Halo 3 is now getting a new map. I don't know
Halo
if you...
3?
Yeah,
Wait,
Halo
what?
3 is getting a new map.
Huh.
So I don't know if you two have heard of Halo Online.
I have. I've actually played a little bit of it.
Yeah. So Halo 3 is getting a map that is based off of a canceled Halo Online map. It was just like out of scope essentially, so they never did it. Called Waterfall. So that map is coming to Halo 3 in the MCC. Which I think is really exciting for a lot of people. Halo 3 is a really, really good shooter. It still is. I'm
It's
just
one of
excited
those,
to see a
like-
new map.
It's one of those like games that kind of never ages, you know? It feels
Yeah.
like no matter what time, and you could chalk that up to nostalgia too, I guess, but I feel like it's just no matter what time you play it in your life, it just never gets like it never feels dated ever.
Master Chief's
I also
luscious
think Halo
vocals.
3 is the last Halo that still had that like slightly goofy feel because of the physics engine.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of went away with Reach, where it became a little bit heavier and everything was
Well,
a
they
little
had
bit more like
goofier
grounded.
characters too. Like Sarge was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pretty goofball kind of character. Not that there's anything wrong with like the way Reach decided to do things, but
Just
I
different
definitely agree
feelings,
with
you know?
that. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that means
definitely.
Reach and Halo 3 and like Reach and Beyond have their own player base too. As the MCC shows, there are people that just play like single Halo games on that collection. Yeah, this is just really exciting to see that we're getting some canceled content in the form of a new map. And I think this is just kind of thing where like probably people at 343 just wanted to do this. So it's happening. I doubt this was a decision that was like made primarily by higher ups. I'm betting it was like they found some unfinished maps and were like, why don't we just finish one of them?
Yeah, it's kind of says a little bit about 343 that they're just kind of willing to do this. Like even if, like you say, like it probably wasn't a higher ups decision. It just means that there is some, despite what you may want to say about them. And I know Brett isn't here to defend himself at the moment, but there is passion there, and you can kind of see that, which is nice, for sure. Anyway, that's my defending 343 out of the way.
Yeah.
Gotta do it. I'm contractually obligated.
Glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah.
Now it's time to crush them.
And it's also getting an FOV slider on Xbox Series X.
Oh, awesome.
And I figured the rest of the Xboxes as well. The articles I looked at specifically mentioned the Series X, but I would assume the regular Xbox or the last gen Xboxes will also be getting it. So
I don't care what platform you're playing, especially a shooter on, it always needs an FOV slider. Again, I don't care.
Because it prevents motion sickness, right? Like,
yeah.
It's not even
the thing that I voted to delete it from history for. It's getting a fix for that.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's been a consistent problem that, like, our topic for this episode is like worst mechanics. One of the worst decisions in games is when you don't have an FOV slider because of how like awful it can be for people that do have motion sickness if it's too short.
Yep.
Or too wide. Like I've played games that are too wide of an FOV and it's still almost just as bad. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. Third-person games can get away without it generally, because that static object in the center of the screen really helps to ground people with motion sickness. But without it, it gets real nauseating sometimes.
Mm.
And we also don't have a date yet on this map. So.
Oh, I thought you said like it was released.
No, it's coming out. So it could be coming out very soon. The rounds of beta testing are starting on the 18th. But we don't know if this map is in that round of beta testing. So we'll see. It might be. It might not be. I would assume we're getting it relatively soon because they've shown photos. It looks mostly finished. It's probably just like collision testing and whatnot that's happening. All right. So almost right after the podcast last week, as tends to happen, we got some news. So we learned that EA is reviewing the progress of Anthem next and will decide whether or not to shutter Anthem this week. The decision's likely been made already, so by the time you're hearing this, you might know the answer to whether or not this happened. We don't have.
It always happens after
yet.
we record. Always, without fail.
Yeah.
In which case, this is no longer a news podcast, and we're sorry.
We got the news.
More of a recap.
Yeah, we got the news that this was happening at some point last week on Monday. So the decision has already been made, most likely, and it's just whether or not when that decision goes public will be the big decider. And I'm betting they're just preparing the blog post either way. So some interesting news. I'm betting you two have heard of a little game called Terraria.
Why, yes.
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. So
just a tiny, yeah.
I'm assuming you've also heard of a little console called Google Stadia.
Stadia, what? I haven't heard of her.
So it is technically a console.
Technically.
Okay. Yeah.
So Google Stadia has kind of been a bit of a mess. It technically works. Having tried the like free version, it like technically works, but it's not a good experience. I played the like Immortals Phoenix Rising demo they had on it, and it was just awful.
Oh dear.
It was like it would play really well for like 30 seconds, and then the next 5 seconds would just be desync and lag, and then it would resync back up, and like it was just like constantly having to worry about if you were lagging or not. Really not a great experience. I wouldn't really recommend using Stadia to most people, unless you're in a place that has like fiber internet and it's viable. But Terraria was meant to come to Stadia. The developer was working on it, so Andrew Spinks was working on the Stadia port, essentially. Google disabled his developer account in personal email. So we don't know why. The guy has not gotten an answer from Google. It seems until even going now, we haven't had an update on this where he has. So he had essentially lost access to his personal email and his Google Drive and everything for the last like 3 weeks, with no response from Google. He was not given any reasons. He reached out to support many times, didn't get any
Because if there's
response.
any fan base that you want to piss off, it's the Terraria guys.
I hate to assume this, but is there some type of allegation that we're missing?
No, there's nothing. This guy has no clue why his email was gone. Like, he literally was not given a single response from Google. So he lost like all his apps. He lost all of his. He just apparently bought the 4K edition of Lord of the Rings.
No.
And lost that. So it's a really weird situation, which has culminated in him going to Twitter after Google would repeatedly just not respond to support emails, and stating that on Twitter, Google has decided to burn this bridge with him, and Terraria is not coming to Google Stadia.
Oh.
Terraria, for those who don't know, is one of the most popular games ever. It is a very, very popular game.
Good
like I was saying
move.
before, yeah, if there's any game that you don't want to, have this kind of stuff happen to, it's probably Terraria.
It's
because,
like Call of Duty and Terraria.
Well played.
Because if you piss off Terraria, that's like the indie dev. Aside from maybe Minecraft, which not anymore. Mojang is now basically AAA.
I wouldn't consider them indie anymore.
Yeah, those were essentially the mascots for a lot of indie games, and this happening is really not boding well for Stadia's relationship with its customers and its developer base. It's not encouraging.
Shocking. It's so shocking because up until this point, Stadia's had such a clean record. It had such a nice launch. Everyone's had nothing but good things.
I mean, it's at least not been that controversial. Like,
well, that's the funny thing, though. It's not controversial. It's just bad.
And now it's also controversial because they burn bridges with developers. So it's like seeing this, I feel like if I was an indie dev working on a port to Google Stadia for whatever reason, this would be a good reason to stop. Like,
I mean, weird hypothetical, but okay.
It's just the kind of situation that is, why would you do this, Google? Like, just prioritize having a decent support network, especially for your partners. Like, this is really, really disappointing to see from a developer's perspective. So hopefully they either get better or admit that they're wrong or something happens. As of right now, we really don't know. So something else interesting happened this week. CD Projekt Red got hacked, and full source code of Gwent, Cyberpunk, and The Witcher 3 was taken.
Oh.
So they've claimed that there's no user data breaches or anything, which is likely true. What it seems like is that a dev machine was, either the hard drive was like stolen or something. So someone has leaked the source code of Gwent and apparently sold the source code of Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher 3.
Oh.
So yeah, CD Projekt Red, after releasing Cyberpunk, is now the victim of a cybercrime. And,
ironic.
To be honest,
I'll leave
this really
the answer up
doesn't
to you
mean
whether
very
you
much.
think they deserve it or not. The answer is no, but you can at least
Of course not. Like, this is stupid. Someone stole their data and sent a ransom note to them. They were like trying to ransom their data. So
that's just a bad thing to do in general. Don't do it.
It's a little bit.
Stop it. Get some help.
Yeah, if you're doing this, it's literally just about to do the same.
But yeah, the interesting stuff with this is that CD Projekt Red has admitted there's a possibility this was an inside job.
Oh.
So it might have been a disgruntled developer. We don't have any
Intrigue.
confirmation of that, and it seems unlikely, but it is possible. Because getting that kind of data is extremely difficult. Devs are typically very, very controlling over who has access to source code. And at the same time, like, the source code is really not that valuable because it's made in a proprietary engine. And I don't know, this seems like the kind of thing that you'd get this and you can't use any of it for anything because people would know that it was made in Red Engine, which is CD Projekt's engine. So, you know, when source code like this leaks, it's really not that valuable. Just because it's practically useless. You don't have any documentation for how to use it. Like, I don't know.
It's not like it's a super it's not like it's a super common like tech that they're using. It's their own proprietary.
I'm assuming people can use it to create like pirated versions of the game, but if that's the worst thing that happens, that's really not that bad. Video games have dealt with piracy for a long time, and GOG is even like a DRM-free platform, so piracy is very easy with GOG.
Also, there are some really funny ways to deal that video games have dealt with piracy that we could do.
Oh yeah, that's
a topic someday.
Definitely deserving of its own episode. But yeah, this is just the kind of thing that happens. You hear about it, and nothing is likely going to come of this. CD Projekt released a statement basically saying that it was nothing important, or it was nothing user related that was stolen. It was stuff that was important, but not user related. And it's not like they stole the only copy of source code. Like, every machine at CD or PR has probably got that source code on it, so they should be fine. It's just this weird situation. All right.
Yeah.
So, hey Wyatt, I got a question for you.
What's up, Ryan?
Has your PS5 controller been drifting?
No. I feel like the rumble has gotten like louder, but not drifting. No.
Yeah. So apparently, some PS5 controllers have been caught drifting, which is a shame because people tend to say that the PS5 controller is one of the better controllers that has been designed with the cool triggers and the fancy rumble.
Oh.
The new design, like the new kind of
it's still really early to tell if this is a widespread problem or not, but it is something that's being reported on. And as we've seen with joystick drifting and Joy-Cons, this is a thing that can happen. I would be surprised if the DualSense has a big issue with this a year down the line, because the reason that the Joy-Con sticks drift is because they're using a type of pad that's designed specifically to be very thin, so you can fit it in a like small frame, and the DualSense is a big controller, so they don't need to use that.
I have been experiencing some drifting on my Switch though.
Yeah, like that's something that's been known about Joy-Cons for a while, is that they basically are designed in a way that makes use of a graphite strip for how the joysticks sense what direction you're pointing, and on the Joy-Cons that stick has a tendency to become kind of worn, and you can temporarily fix it by doing a lot of small things. Like, you can kind of just jostle it a bit and it'll fix it temporarily, but eventually it will get a permanent drift.
So that's a call for new controllers to be bought for that then?
It depends. If it's the first time you're getting it and you haven't had them for more than like a year, you can probably do one of the fixes, and like a lot of them are just like stick a toothpick and wiggle it around. It's not that hard to fix the first time, but if it continues to happen, it becomes more of an issue. It's also why I tend to use my Pro controller on my Switch, just because I don't want to deal with it. So, because it happens with wear, it's not something that's going to happen on new controllers generally. Yeah. That's most of our news. Aside from the Super Mario remakes coming out on Switch, there's really nothing else. Unless, I actually did forget about this, but Unreal showed some cool tech called the MetaHuman Creator.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, this is a character creation system that is designed for game and software developers.
I'm out of a job.
I mean, it only works for realistic models, and it looks primarily aimed at uses that'll be using characters in like a modern setting. So it's a character creator. It looks pretty cool. It's not out yet, but there's some cool tech demos they've been showing. And it basically will allow you to use Unreal to create characters that can be used in games, in various other things, with varying levels of detail. It's making use of Unreal 5's whole level of detail system that essentially eliminates the need for developers to do that, and it will kind of hard bake it into the engine itself, which is really, really nice. It's the kind of thing that saves a ton of time with development. So I'm really excited for this, to see what this looks like when it comes out and is like officially usable. And of course, because it's like a primary and Epic only thing, I assume it will be free if you're using Unreal Engine. That's generally how all of their big development things go. So that's very exciting for a lot of indie devs and whatnot working on realistic games, as your characters are likely a lot easier to make now.
You can catch me shifting my entire portfolio to hyperrealism and stylized.
Yep. I mean, you're still going to need things like clothing and whatnot, but at least your characters are a lot easier. And it looks like there's probably some method of lip syncing to them as well, would be my bet.
What was
Go ahead.
What was the thing that CD Projekt Red used? Was it Jolly?
Jolly, yeah. Jolly's a really, really cool tech as well. But lip syncing is notoriously difficult for indie devs because there's not really a lot of good software that can do it that is cheap. There's a lot of expensive AAA solutions that are designed for things like Cyberpunk, where you have the budget to basically outsource lip syncing to a company. But indie devs don't have that option. They got to figure a way to deal with it in their own small team. So I'm excited to see if that is incorporated into this MetaHuman creator. From the video they showed, I would guess yes, but they didn't confirm yes or no. It could definitely be someone was just animating it. Yeah, I really hope it is. All right. Any other news you guys want to talk about that I missed?
Can't think of anything.
Not that I know of.
Unless you want to talk about Niantic doing things. I think we're good.
It's very vague, but all right. Well,
actually, okay, no, Niantic did a good thing. Niantic launched a Black Developers Initiative. I read it. I read the title first and was very confused and didn't actually read what it meant. They're launching a Black Developers Initiative for funding and mentorship, which is actually pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
At the same time, it's Niantic, who is pretty notorious for having some issues on the development end, and being a little bit disorganized. So
the people who made Pokemon Go being disorganized, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But hey, Wyatt, I got some news you might like.
Ooh.
So we often talk solely about video games, but at the same time, we often talk about things that are adjacent to video games, and you can certainly call the Last of Us HBO series adjacent to video games.
I did hear about that.
Oh.
Yes, I did.
So we have casting for Joel and Ellie. So Ellie will be played by Bella Ramsey, who played the Mormont girl in Game of Thrones, which is a cool casting choice. I am quite fond of that. And good old Mando himself, Pedro Pascal, is Joel.
Oh, yes.
So I'm a little more excited for this now just because I like Pedro Pascal. I think he's really good in a lot of his stuff. So I'm excited to see this.
So my problem with this, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't like specifically with the casting. It's with the choice of game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Because this is a game that's very specifically about one story. And we're just talking about the first one, obviously.
Okay, so we don't have to see him
was done. We don't need to see it again.
With a golf club.
We're not gonna say anything else
without I really think the best games to adapt into film are ones that don't focus so much on a central story, right? So
that way you can make your own central story.
So as weird as it may seem, I think that like something like Doom would make a perfect movie or a perfect adaptation, because you can have the iconography, you can have a lot of like what makes Doom, but you can do your own story, and you don't have to worry about pleasing fans in that respect, you know?
Yeah.
Or even something like Assassin's Creed works because it's a different story for different people. Well, recently anyway.
It would work if video game movies were good.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have a problem when it's an adaptation of a game that's so focused on its story that we don't need to see it again from actors that I'm sure will do a good job, but it's not the same.
See,
It's
like,
like
I
why watch
honestly
it?
wish if the Last of Us show was not about Joel and Ellie. Like, I'd be totally down for a Last of Us show that is about a new
Yeah.
cast of characters just in the
You know
world.
what? You know what I would accept? I would accept Joel if it was a show about, Joel and Tess, for instance.
Yeah,
Like
like Joel
their years
before
together.
the events of the game.
I would so watch that. I would be so down. And while we're talking about Naughty Dog, I know that there is an Uncharted movie in the works. That would work much better as well because you can kind of do whatever story you want with Nathan Drake goofing around with good old Sully, right? Because it's not about
yeah.
because you can have it be very serialized and it works very well.
Yeah, because the
I just
Uncharted
think that
movie is a
Last of
prequel,
Us-
right? It's set earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
super
has
super
young Nathan. So, but
Yeah.
they've handled his origin, so it's going to be somewhere in between that and the PlayStation Portable Uncharted
Yeah.
game, I guess.
I mean, treasure hunting is super easy to just make a cool story about,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't need the
incredibly.
origin.
And again, it's like Uncharted is something that's very like serialized in the sense that you can create kind of whatever
Yeah.
story you want out of it. Whereas like you can't do that with Last of Us, at least with Joel and Ellie. You can.
Yeah, not with the same set of characters.
Yeah, and I'm sure
It
it'll
could be
fine.
really
Like, I don't
good.
think there's gonna be I don't think there's gonna be anything wrong with it. I just think that it's like I don't care to see the same story again in live action.
That is the thing I wonder about the show is what's the goal? Like, because I think the people that are really into the narrative side and like cinematography side got that with The Last of Us, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think The Last of Us is cinematic enough on its own that watching a TV show of the same events really doesn't seem like it's gonna, make me any fonder of the events that happen because I'm already so fond of the game, right?
People who haven't played the game will definitely get more out of it, but
Yeah.
is it made for people who haven't played the game then?
I kind of
it's
hope
just-
so.
Yeah.
I
But
hope
wouldn't
it's
you want it to be. Yeah,
my bet
I
is
don't
it's
know.
made for the fans of like The Walking Dead first couple seasons. Is this an HBO show? That would be my bet. Is that they're trying to find a replacement for primetime zombie show.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, like The Last of Us is a really good setting for that.
I'd be very happy to see practical effect zombies instead of CGI.
Absolutely. Practical effect clickers, I mean, that would be so much fun to see.
They could use the exact same sound that they make too. Like they wouldn't even have to change a thing, and I'd be fine with it just because that sound is so it's so iconic and so well done.
And the production team behind this, I have a lot of faith in. It's co-produced by Craig Mazin, who was the creator of Chernobyl, another really, really highly regarded series.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if anyone's gonna match the tone of The Last of Us, the director of Chernobyl is a good pick.
Seems like a good fit. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a good team behind it. I'm hoping it strays far enough from the games that it will still be enjoyable to watch as someone who has played the game.
Yeah.
It's not just the same thing again.
I don't think it's the best game to adapt, but they've got good actors, they've got good people working on it. I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
All right, so now we can get into our primary topic for the episode, which is game mechanics that we like and don't like. So we've talked about game mechanics a few times before on this show. I mean, we talk about it all the time because it's a show about video games, and mechanics are all the time, everywhere. But what we're specifically looking to talk about this time is like mechanics that are either really, really good in their thing, or mechanics that they're so ill-fitting or just so obnoxious. Or in the case of certain things, mechanics that have kind of ingrained their way into a genre and continued to be staples of that genre while actively hurting it. So I want to start off by giving a shout out to hunger meters in survival games and food rotting, because I don't get it. I don't get why it's fun. And actually, no, okay, I do get why it's fun, but I am not the person that enjoys it. And I think the people that enjoy it are often like the PvP crowd who wants a game to be very hardcore, so that they can like really get into the systems in it and whatnot. But survival games are often played by two different types of crowds, which is those hardcore PvP crowds as well as like PvE crowds who just like creating a base and like surviving, doing the survival PvE stuff. And there are a few games that are really good at that. There's Subnautica in the past, which is really good, and has a mode where you can just turn the hunger meter off because it's obnoxious. That's generally my thought of it, is like a lot of these games that have hunger meters are just super obnoxious. Until I played a little game that I've talked about the last week, I think, briefly, called Valheim. So Valheim does a little trick with how hunger is portrayed, and it functionally works very similar to hunger meters in other games, where it's basically required to eat food, but it just flips it. So essentially, instead of hunger being like a meter that goes down, when you eat food, your max HP increases.
Oh.
By very significant amounts. So your base HP is 25. You can eat 3 different types of food. You can't eat the same food more than once at a time. And then every time you eat food, it lasts for like 20 minutes or something, right? And over the course of that time, your HP slowly shrinks back to normal. So if I eat 3 food pieces in that time span that are different, I can get my HP up to like 100. So instead of being a detractor that you have to constantly keep track of, it's a buff now. And it also means that if you're in your base just like building, you don't need to worry about it, because it's not going to kill you if you don't have any food. So
Interesting.
I think that's very, very fun. It's a nice flip on the way that it works.
To add on to that, I think another good use, and it's not exactly the same thing, but I really like the way that Red Dead Redemption 2 handled health and was it stamina cores, right? If you remember how that worked. Basically, it kind of reminded me of the way that Minecraft does things, actually, where you kind of have a health bar and a stamina bar, and then that fill up or empty. But then you also have, from what I remember, I haven't played it in a while, but I remember liking it. But then you also have this other meter that kind of surrounds it, right? And your health and stamina won't fill up unless the meter surrounding it is full, essentially. And so it's a hunger meter, but it doesn't really like kill you if it empties. It just your speed kind of lowers and stuff like that, but it doesn't outright kill you. And it also doesn't it also doesn't decrease in very quickly, so it doesn't end up being very obnoxious. But it still makes you like heal up or eat food or drink or whatever. So it still kind of immerses you into the world in that way without it being too obnoxious. And I thought it was really well balanced.
Yeah, and you also don't have to micromanage it, which is usually my worst like thing in those types of games. Is when I have to micromanage what food I'm eating at what time, and like what buff, or what, not what buff it's going to give me, but like, am I going to die if I eat that now instead of later?
Or where you have to worry more about, or where you're scared more about running out of food than, like in a survival horror atmosphere than, the ghosts chasing you.
Yeah, it's just like I would rather engage with the game than engage with a food system. And I think Valheim does a good job of incentivizing engaging with the game through the food system, instead of having the food system be a limiter on what you can do.
So would you say it's a good like survival game for people that don't typically like that?
Oh, absolutely. Valheim is like the closest comparison is Terraria, in that it's a game about boss progression. So you have a sequence of bosses that you fight in the open world. This is another mechanic I love in the game, is when you kill a boss, it unlocks a new tier of resources, essentially. So like, until you kill the first boss, you don't have a pickaxe. You can't build stone anything. You can't mine ores. So no metal tools. You're all building just wood buildings. But
so there's a good incentive for boss fights and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the fights are fun, and they're not too hard. So they're tuned very well for single player, or low player amount co-op. But what's really nice is that the stuff you use at the start of the game isn't useless. So you start having all the like wood stuff you can build unlocked for the most part. So like walls and whatnot, and like your basic building materials, and those are still useful the further you go into the game. They just do different things. So like you eventually unlock stone to build with, but stone has drawbacks. So stone is really, really strong, and it doesn't degrade with the weather, but it's very heavy. So you can't like hang stone over things, right? Like stone has to have supports directly underneath it, or else you can't build it there, because it'll just fall apart. But that's where your wood comes in. So you can like build a stone foundation and then build wood off of it, and it's a stronger building. So that's the kind of thing that I really like about the game, is it incentivizes mixing materials that you've had for a long time. Yeah, it's a really, really solid survival game if you like to build things.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think it's a very cool twist on that type of mechanic. Which made me think of another mechanic. So, have you both played MMOs before? I think you have, at least Destiny, right?
Yep, and some others.
I've played more traditional. I used to play Guild Wars. There was a time where I played a lot of Guild Wars.
So, you guys are familiar with the concept of like rested XP, right?
Yes, yeah.
That if you log out in a town, you get a boost when you log back in.
I did not know that was a thing, but
so that's a thing in most MMOs, and
okay.
The reason is actually to keep people from playing them too much. Generally, it's essentially built to de-incentivize people from playing the game 12 hours a day. And for most people, it works because what it will do is that if you rest in an inn or something when you log out, when you log back in, you'll earn twice as much XP for however many points, based on the time you were logged off. So the interesting thing about that system is originally it worked the other way. In the World of Warcraft, Blizzard devs that designed it talked about it a lot, where originally what they did is you started to earn less XP over the course of the day. So all they did was flip the amounts. Instead of the less XP being a penalty, the less XP was now the base level of XP you earned. And what that had used to be the regular XP rate is now the rested buff. So it functions exactly the same, but the trick is the game tricks you into thinking that you're getting more by not playing and then logging back in a day later. So you keep coming back. You consistently play the game, but you don't play it too much, so you don't get through the content too quickly. Which is just a cool mechanic that I think is good for both developers and players. It's a fun little MMO RPG thing that they've continued to do until now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what have you guys got? What mechanics do you either hate or love?
I'll go. So I've been playing a lot of Titanfall 2 recently because I picked it up on Steam, and I've kind of realized that like the multiplayer, I've remembered at least how the multiplayer kind of has everything that I love in like FPS, like online FPS games, right? So the first one being, I really love having a mix of human of like actual players and then also AI controlled enemies that just kind of run around, right? Because it kind of serves this nice dual purpose of you can kind of feed off of them so you can call in your Titan faster and kind of keep your team's score up. So like even if you're a player that isn't quite as good, you can still just run around and focus on taking out like grunts and reapers and stuff like that, and you can still contribute, which is really nice. But also it's really nice like window dressing. Like it just feels like the battle is much bigger than it is when you have tons of other just like groups of AI controlled just grunts running around, and it just makes the battle feel a lot more alive, especially when the maps are as big as they are. And I just love seeing that.
Yeah.
And especially when they have such great voice lines that are kind of like hyping you up as you run by. They're like, "Oh crap, it's a Titan! Like the odds are in our favor," and it just like it makes you feel like such a badass.
Yeah, those kind of callouts. It's the same thing that like Ace Combat and Project Wingman do, where the AI calling out how cool you are is a really good way of making the player feel cool.
Yeah, that's like if there's one thing that Titanfall does best more than anything, it just makes you feel awesome.
Yeah,
that's like its number one goal, and it just does it so well.
Which is cool, especially when you're fighting other players that are also feeling awesome. It's a difficult feeling to make sure everyone in a match is actually having fun. And I think Titanfall is a lot better at it than like Call of Duty can be at times. So
Call of Duty can make you it's interesting, right? Because Call of Duty just makes you feel like you're bad, right? A lot of the
unless
time,
you're really good, you just feel bad.
Yeah, and then sometimes I don't always get this feeling, but occasionally when you're playing Battlefield, you just feel so tiny and insignificant sometimes, Whereas like I feel like Titanfall strikes that perfect balance of like it always makes you feel awesome and you always feel like you're a part of the action in some way, which is great.
Good point. So Alex, you got a mechanic for us?
Okay. One that I oh. I have two that I am that I have several gripes about.
All right.
Both little, I guess, mini tastes on them. So first one is flashlight mechanics. Um, I was about to say this as a character artist and not an environment artist. Just build a more interesting environment. That's not how that works. It's the I find flashlight mechanics, even or especially with the running out of batteries function and things like that. It really just takes me more out of the game world than it does I get immersing me
Especially
in it
because, like,
because I have
what
a light source
flashlight runs out of batteries in 2 minutes?
so quickly.
Like,
yeah.
in what universe? You know what flashlight mechanics are, Alex? They're a hunger meter.
Oh, I will say the
That's
one
a really good
where
point.
I have found this very interesting though, where I found a really nice use of it, is in I think it's the Blair Witch game, where the flashlight is the camera and you use the camera to sort of like rewind and mess with time.
Oh yeah.
So it's still not really the flashlight mechanic. It's appended to it. It's the same tool, but it's a thing there. Secondly, my gripe, and this is more of a instrument of this is more of an instrument of play than a mechanic. It's a mechanic. Bounties, since we were talking about MMOs.
Yeah.
Having repetitive bounty systems when a underlying game's grind can get very stale.
You talking about something specific here?
I might be, Wyatt. I might be.
Not want to name names? Huh?
I mean,
I think our audience can figure
Destiny,
it out for themselves.
but we can also then name every MMO. Like,
Yeah.
even the good ones do this. And I don't have a problem with it existing as long as it's not your primary thing to do.
Which, in a certain game, it is.
Yep. Yeah. Which is a shame, because, like, we're dancing around Destiny here, but Destiny 2 can be a really fun game a lot of the time, and it's got some really cool stuff. But a lot of that really cool stuff isn't in the game anymore.
Yeah. Like they have, and I've been
It's like I miss Menagerie, Alex.
I know that was the best thing about it.
Me too.
So tiny, very tiny, not necessarily rant, but tangent. This season,
yeah,
I loathe the story content. There is so little to actually experience in game. Regardless of whether or not when it's being released, being petered out throughout the season, there's not enough to keep me interested.
Destiny
The
has
Eververse
story content. What?
The Eververse store.
the
in-game store has so many interesting ornaments for weapons and armor in it this season. There were two ornaments that I've been pretty much lusting after since I started playing the game, and they are in next week and the week after that. I'm popping in to buy those for Bright Dust, and then only playing with other people because I can't stand to play the game alone anymore.
And because I haven't played the game in a little while, is Bright Dust still attainable without buying things?
It's locked even further behind bounties now, but you don't have weekly bounties to get it.
Can you not dismantle ghosts anymore to get Bright Dust?
You can't get Bright Dust from ghosts.
Oh, wasn't that a thing at one point?
I don't know.
Used to be.
But
it used to be able to dismantle.
A couple seasons ago, you used to be able to get 200 Bright Dust per weekly bounty. Last season, they disabled it to 100 Bright Dust per bounty. There are no more weekly bounties, and there's a bunch of and this is where the bounty gripe not comes to a halt, but I admire them for trying to change it up. It's still hella repetitive though, and uninteresting, but it is so much more different than how it used to be. they're still bounties.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
I'm always iffy
they've
on
also
it.
made it. They've also made it account wide. So whereas you could get 200 for each weekly on each character you had, you can only do it for one character. So you were earning about a third as much price dust, which will, in the long run, end up on you buying silver to get cosmetic items, or not getting them at all and not being happy.
And this is where I still think Warframe's got probably the best cosmetic earning system in the Nightwave style, where there's a bunch of weekly bounties, but they go away and they come back if you complete your bounties in a week, and you have like 1 week to play a lot during the entire season.
I believe that's how they've modeled it after. But they haven't gotten it completely to Warframe's level yet.
Do they let you play bounties that you missed, or are they all just season long?
Yeah,
I mean, that's nice.
I think it's going to be within the season, but if you miss a week's bounties, there are now like 10 bounties per week or something. But they'll stack up and you can complete them whenever.
So yeah, I like that system a lot more than having weekly bounties that go away permanently, because it is a lot more friendly to being able to complete them at any point during the season. Like, if you know you like to play Destiny once every month, you can now go in and like hardcore play Destiny for a week and probably
go
do
on
a
bender to buy those shaders.
I still despise that shaders are real money things, especially because they're consumable. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of that design choice, but I think that argument was done to death when the game announced that. So
I'm so sorry for going on a Destiny tangent again.
Like, Destiny is just rife with tangents, both about good and bad things. Like,
we don't tend to focus on the good one.
Well, I mean, we're talking about some good mechanics. Destiny's got some good shooting.
Oh,
absolutely. Good shooting.
It is the first shooter.
The best.
It is the first first-person shooter that I've played where the guns have felt great.
I think, weirdly enough, the only games I've played recently that have guns that feel as good as Destiny and like have as much kick as Destiny can have are Cyberpunk and Doom Eternal. Like,
yeah,
those are really the only FPSs I've played recently.
I would also argue it's a very different style of shooter, to be fair, but Modern Warfare has really, really excellent
play. That's right. From the little bit I played of the beta, that was really, really fun,
and it's a very different type of shooter.
I think I'm just more attracted to sci-fi shooters than sim shooters.
But just like the amount of kick that you get from certain weapons in that game, because the sound design is just so ridiculously detailed and like on point that it's nuts.
That's definitely a good point. But yeah, I think Destiny, especially like the one thing I always love in Destiny is when you shoot a fallen in the head and the stream of light just like bursts out. So satisfying.
I mean, I'm so sorry because via lore and canonically, they're the race that I have the most sympathy for.
I know.
Everything else can burn in a fire. Screw you, Hive. But
yeah, they're some of the most fun to fight. So I don't know. I think Destiny just does a really good job of making the limited amount of enemies it has very satisfying to take down.
And boy, have they rang every single drop out of that towel.
Yeah, they really have.
My goodness. It's actually kind of shocking.
It's like, I feel like whenever we talk about Destiny, we have to hand it insult sandwiches of insult, compliment, insult.
But that's how
the lowest form of
That's critique. What the game is like, though. That's what it's like to play it.
Even from its most hardcore fans, that's pretty much how they treat it. You know?
Playing the game is eating an insult.
That's because there's nothing else that competes with it. Like, Destiny is pretty much alone in the live service shooter.
At the end of the day, the memes are right. Destiny will be the Destiny killer because there's nothing else that's ever going to come close to it.
And like, people compare to Warframe to Destiny, but having played a lot of both, like, Warframe fulfills more different. Of like a Dynasty Warriors.
And Division fits in its own because it's far more tactical.
Yeah, Division is way different.
It's very slow paced. I mean, there are a lot of like the looter shooter online service stuff is similar, but when you even just look at the combat, it's so different.
I mean, are you able to boost glide and triple jump in the Division? I don't think so.
Yeah, but are you able to throw out giant swarm rockets and drones in Destiny? and have it be realistic. No, I mean in a semi-realistic setting where you're cover dodging. Oh, Division's fun.
No.
Division is a fun setting.
And completely besides the point, I just love the way Division's UI looks. It's such a unique, like this cool like tactical sort of orange look to it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like 3D UI. It's not diegetic, but
it's hologram. It's hologram aesthetic.
It's hologram. It's so cool looking.
Like Pip-Boy UI, but good.
No, think of it as like a holographic projection into the world, essentially. Like it's 3D.
Yeah, like UI. The screens that Iron Man has.
Oh,
it's like that aesthetic.
Think of like
very nice.
Okay, no. Here's the best way to describe it. It's Microsoft HoloLens. Is the best way to describe it.
That is the best way to describe it, actually. So yeah, and I like you can compare Borderlands to Destiny on the surface level, but I think when you get down to it, those games are very different.
Yeah, because Borderlands is more fun because you don't have to worry about balancing.
But Borderlands is also not a game.
On balance as you want.
Generally, not a game you're going to be playing every day for like a year. Like it's not designed to be that. It's designed to be a game you play like once a month.
It's not one that breaks you into having to feel like you need to do the daily grind.
Yeah, it's just unnecessary in Borderlands. Like you don't need to. It's a game where you set your own difficulty. So.
And it's a game that just throws guns at you with reckless abandon, which is what I love about it. And it feels like every single weapon in that game feels like a Destiny exotic.
Yeah,
because they all have their own interesting look to it, their own kind of mechanics going on depending on like the faction that you get it from. It's just
and even like if they're unique, they have sub mechanics that are unique.
Yeah, like there's literally a weapon that just is Handsome Jack's voice, and it just talks to you in Handsome Jack's voice the entire time. How it's great.
From what very little I've played of 2, it also feels like the perk mix and match of randomized guns does not get old at all.
Yeah, especially because like the unique designs are great, and even the uniques have random stats, so you still have a lot of leeway in how those are.
And I'll also say. Alex, I don't know if you know this. There is a gun in the game that literally fires out guns.
Oh, it's not even one gun. There are more than one gun that does that.
You basically there's a currency called iridium, and if you pay 10 iridium, it shoots out like 5 guns.
And you can pick up those guns and use them.
So when I say reckless abandon, I am not over exaggerating at all. I'm not making this up. This is not a bit.
The gun. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Borderlands 3 is a lot of fun.
It's definitely a nice change of pace from Destiny that feels so stingy at times.
I will add, so Borderlands 3, I think you can say whatever you want about its DLC structure. I'm not a huge fan of the multiple season pass thing in any game. But Borderlands 3, I went back in and picked up the director cut. The like director's to director cut, whatever that it's called. It's got a weird name. It's essentially like the mini DLC, and it includes a mode called Arms Race, which is basically a single player battle royale where you drop into a not small, but like a slightly smaller battle royale arena type thing and run around the map having no weapons. You don't have the use of your abilities. You just have to use whatever you find. And then you can find and extract guns, but there's a limited amount of guns that you can extract. But like I found a unique weapon in my first run that like when you use it, it summons 3 floating guns that fly around you and shoot whatever you're shooting.
Oh.
Like there's some fun stuff in that mode. And I think it's really, really fun because it's like 20-minute maximum. It's got the shrinking field that battle royales have. So you constantly have to move towards the boss fight at the end. Which I think is just a really fun system. I'm hoping they do more with it because I wish that was in the base game, because I think if it was in the base game we'd have like 3 or 4 different maps, a lot of different stuff to it. But it's a lot of fun to play that, and I'm sure it would be like even more fun in co-op. But having played it single player, it's really, really fun.
And speaking of battle royale, if we could smoothly transition into another one I want to talk about. I've said before many times I don't like battle royale. And for me, one of the big reasons for that is how much of the game is dictated on RNG, on luck of the draw, right? Especially in a game where you only have one life, and there's so much riding on the line in that one life, right?
And you will always eventually be sniped across the map and never see who hit you.
Exactly. And so
Yes, I'm
dropping
still
down,
salty about that.
and so like dropping down and potentially being screwed by the randomness of it is very frustrating. And what it creates is a very inconsistent experience from game to game, right?
Yeah.
Both in terms of like how much fun you had because of how fair the loot was, but also how quick a match is. You could have a match that lasts 5 seconds because you land right next to someone that just happened to pick up a shotgun while you picked up, some bullets.
A stick.
Yeah. Or you have matches where you make it to the very end and they last like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. I guess depending on the battle royale you're playing. And it's just there's way too much randomness going on that it makes it really frustrating.
Yeah, and I think like
not a fan.
The thing for me is I also am not a huge fan of battle royales. I've enjoyed some. Like I enjoyed Apex when it first came out, but I can never play them for more than like a month. And I dislike them for different reasons than Wyatt. I like a lot of randomness in games. I like the loot aspect of it, but it's the length of matches and the downtime that I think really gets to me. Of like those matches can be half an hour to an hour long, and 20 of those, like 20 to 40 minutes of that might just be you running around doing nothing. And then what people will often say to that is, well, we'll just play it aggressive. And I'm like, if I want to play aggressively, I would rather just play Titanfall. Like, yeah. I don't want to play a battle royale at that point. I just want to play like Call of Duty or Titanfall, or a game that allows me to just have fun running at people with a gun.
Like, which I will say helps in terms of one of the reasons I think Apex Legends is kind of an exception is that they keep the map and the number of players way smaller than other battle royales, and so it does a much better job of like getting you into conflicts a lot faster, because it's always a weird thing where it feels like battle royales, like the big ones, are always getting bigger both in terms of like player counts and map size, and I feel like that just makes it worse, personally speaking. And I think that's why Apex succeeds, is because it's much smaller.
It's also the squad-based gameplay really helps.
Yeah, my favorite, the battle royales that I usually end up liking are ones that are not typical, right? So Apex is pretty atypical in terms of battle royale. The other one that I've enjoyed a lot, I haven't played a whole lot of it, but I have really enjoyed it, is Hunt, is another really good example. And it's another game that uses PvE and PvP stuff going on.
I'm always just a fan of I'd much prefer to play with than against people.
Mm-hmm. I'm the exact same way, which is why I play Destiny for so long, because it has like some really good PvE. It has I would say primarily focused on PvE.
Used
to, yeah. And look, because we're doing an insult sandwich, I just want to bring up Gambit once again.
What a good mode.
Flippin' mode. Honestly, one of the best PvE
well, because the emphasis is on PvE, but PvP is that optional threat. Whereas I think like my biggest issue with Hunt, I think, is that the PvP is a lot more present in it, which is something I personally dislike.
It is and it isn't, right? I've played entire games where you never run into other people.
Yeah,
I have, knock on wood, been having a very nice, have been having a pretty long run of not running into any cheaters in Gambit, so I'm starting to like it again.
Yeah, I got lucky. Wood. I don't think I ever really ran into a lot of cheaters in Gambit.
The only time, like, I just ran into bad players that didn't know what they were doing, and
like that's okay, right? Because I think a lot.
That's not the game's fault.
Gambit is a difficult mode to understand the first few times you play it, so you expect to see some people that aren't 100% sure what they're doing.
All you got to know.
Yeah, I think
those moats, brother.
And part of the problem with Destiny is I think a lot of the Destiny community isn't that friendly, because it's that hardcore shooter audience that is often made up of people that would rather insult you than help you understand a mechanic. And that's not everyone. In fact, it's probably not even a majority.
Know a group of people to play with before getting into Destiny.
Or find one. Like, you can totally find fun Destiny groups. It's just...
Oh, yeah.
Make sure to look...
There's a lot of friends that I have that I met via playing Destiny on like specific Discord servers and stuff.
Yeah, like I have friends I met through playing Halo back on the Xbox 360 that like playing with the right people makes it way more fun. And you totally can find those, but Destiny in general has an iffy community, which brings me to my next point, which is we talked a lot about MMOs this episode, and I want to give another shout out to Final Fantasy XIV because weirdly enough, it's got like the nicest community of any MMO out there. Which is funny because it's also got some of the most bonkers raid mechanics. Like, Final Fantasy XIV is the kind of game where if you go in a trial or a raid, which you have to do to finish the narrative and whatnot, without knowing what it is, you're probably just going to die. And instead of reacting and, like, flaming you, people in FF14 will, like, gently teach you the right mechanics and like, stick by you if you die 2 or 3 times. It's just weird to see a community like that in an MMO because generally they aren't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of that just comes from it being a Final Fantasy game, and generally the people that play those are more single player oriented and not the type of people that get that satisfaction from beating other people at games. So I think the audience in general is just a little bit calmer, which is both a good and a bad thing, but. Yeah, I think that makes it a much more enjoyable MMO to play as someone who doesn't tend to like hardcore MMOs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's weird how that compares to like Battle Royales and whatnot, because I think they're the same way.
Oh god, yeah, it's whenever I play with randos and they're active on comms, it's usually never pleasant, at least in my experience.
I mean, I've actually had some good matches in Apex.
Apex is probably the best. I just remember back when I was trying out Warzone, I was like, "Who?
Yeah,
what even?" I mean, that's also just the COD community, so.
Yeah, it's odd how a lot of mechanics will kind of encourage and discourage that. Like, if based on how competitive the game is, how competitive the audience is going to be, basically, which is always interesting to see. It's nice comparing something like the Destiny fan base to like the World of Warcraft fan base and seeing what the differences are. There really aren't that many, so. But yeah, so who else has got a mechanic that they either like or dislike?
Well, I've been playing Bioshock recently. Ooh. And I've seen this memed for a very long time and made fun of for a very long time, but I didn't actually understand how big of an issue it was until I started playing. Forced mini games that have very little to do with the actual game and just slow everything down and frustrate you. And if you've played Bioshock, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Would you kindly play pinball for the 87th time?
The hacking mini game I thought was kind of cute at first, and then it dawned on me just how many times you do it, and
that's the plumbing mini game, right?
Yeah, you have to like turn all the pipes.
Oh, I remember it now.
You have to redirect water and move around pipes so much that you'll make Mario jealous because you don't actually do any actual plumbing anymore.
Oh,
because the thing that's weird is like it's not a bad mini game, but they overuse it so much. Yeah.
Well, and it's like really weirdly developed, like very in depth too, which again shouldn't be a bad thing. It's like there's all sorts of different like, oh, avoid this, or like this will slow down the current, this will speed up the current. There's a surprising amount of like tonics like that deal with hacking and stuff like that, and it's like it's just too much, you know. I definitely prefer the way Bioshock 2 handles it. It's all done in real time, so the game doesn't stop, which makes it kind of more scary, I guess. It's way simpler. It's like a quarter of the time because it's really just like hitting the F key at the right moment, which sounds less fun, but it's also quicker.
It's a lot faster paced, yeah.
It's a lot faster paced, and you also get a dedicated weapon to do remote hacks, which is actually really cool. Yeah, so that sticks out of my mind is like, why is this here? and not that like mini games can't be done well. Like mini games that are fun that come to mind is weirdly enough, I really liked the mini games in Mario Odyssey.
Oh yeah,
those were a lot of fun. And because like you do them every once in a while, and they're just kind of cute little one-off things that you don't have to do either. Like, and technically you don't have to do them in Bioshock either. But if you don't hack anything in Bioshock, I just don't think you're playing the game correctly.
Yeah. It's like you're locking yourself off of content.
Yeah, and you're also just making things way more difficult for you than they need to be.
Yeah, it's a weird situation.
It can be done well, but you gotta dial it in correctly.
It's like I love minigames in games. Like Yakuza is one of my favorite franchises, and the minigames are a large part of that reason. But the nice thing is, Yakuza games generally don't force you to ever play a minigame more than once. So like, I think you have to do karaoke one time, and even then, you might be able to not play it. In fact, I think you can, but like, why would you not do that?
Think of all the memes.
But like the one thing that comes to mind is there's been like 2 Yakuza games where at the start you're given like a goal to, in either a mahjong parlor or a gambling house, get a certain item to get a character to do something for you. And you can do it one of 2 ways. You can either play the minigame and win it, which is usually easier than getting enough money. But if you don't want to play the minigame, all you got to do is just pay like a little bit of money to get the item. So it's super easy to skip, and there's like a narrative reason as to why you skipped it. You're just like, you go to someone who plays the game better, and you're like, hey, if I pay you this much money, will you just get it for me? And they do it. So I think it's an elegant option for people that don't want to play like mahjong or blackjack to instead just like get past that bit without having to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a nice option to have. So Alex, I feel you simmering. I feel energy coming from your corner, just ready to seethe unto us.
So this is one that I like, and one that I so wish could be in more games other than just one. I'm hoping not to take up too much time with this, but the Nemesis system.
Ooh. Yep.
Oh, I love it so much. I love building an army out of the recruiting process for orcs too. That's so fun. Just the procedural allies that you can recruit, and God, there's so many just personalities that you could possibly go up against with the Nemesis system. It's near endless fun.
I'm curious, have you played Shadow of War yet?
I have not played the second one. I've just played the first.
And it's even better in the second one. They do some really, really cool stuff because you can summon your like dominated orcs as bodyguards and do like cool missions with them.
Ooh.
So it plays even more into the Nemesis system and like expands the like ally side of it a lot, which is really fun.
I haven't encountered this one in the first one. So was it also in the second one where you said they could your allies could have death-defying moments?
Yeah.
Or something, or save you from?
That's in the second one. I don't know if it's in the first one. I haven't experienced it yet, but it's pretty rare. The second one has a lot more like events that can happen with it. And yeah, like for me, the Nemesis system, I kind of expand to be like any character-based system where you can kind of manipulate either randomly generated or just like unique characters to do things.
At least in the games that I've played or come across, I haven't really found anything else like it.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out a Crusader Kings game when you get the chance. It's on Game Pass, Crusader Kings 3. And a lot of people, like, when you say that, are like, huh, that's a historical game. But it's got a lot of the same, like, relationship manipulation stuff that the Nemesis system does.
And,
like, really allows you to make those very personal stories in a similar way. Which is, to me, like, the best part of the game. It's very, very similar feeling to the Nemesis system. It's a lot of fun.
All right.
But yeah, I would absolutely recommend anyone that hasn't to check out either Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor, and giving one of them a play to experience that system. Which is a shame now because WB has patented it.
Yeah.
So we may not see it in anything else.
Not entirely unsurprising, but
Which is like, I don't fully know if this patent is one of those things where if you make something vaguely similar, they're gonna get you for it. I doubt it. I don't think it's quite like the loading screen minigame patent that I think Nintendo used to have. Yeah, that used to be a thing where a lot of the time, like, the reason you wouldn't see loading screen minigames in most games is because it was patented. You couldn't do it.
Can I just... Nintendo's really hard to like sometimes.
I don't... I think it was Nintendo. I can double check this right now, actually.
They have such likable games, but as a studio, they can be...
it was Namco. It was not Nintendo.
Okay.
It was Namco.
Okay. My point still stands, but okay.
Still the same issue. Like,
yeah.
But the nice thing is, we've heard rumors we might get a Nemesis system light in Gotham Knights, which is a WB game.
Okay.
So supposedly it might be something to do with the enemies and whatnot, using a Nemesis-like system. We don't really know any more details about it, but I would be totally down for randomly generated comic book villains with a Nemesis system. It'd be a lot of fun. Especially if you got some wild outfits.
You're gonna get the polka daughter again.
I just want to see Squirrel Girl.
Or Corn Man.
Let's get Squirrel Girl in the mainstream.
Squirrel Girl as a nemesis? Oh no.
Did arm fall off, boy? Which, that is a real superhero.
DC has all the worst, like,
Plastic Man
heroes. Yeah.
They're just really funny.
God.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Gotham Knights.
I do have one. Only one game has this. I'm talking about multiplayer FPS again because, what else would I be talking about? I can only think of one game that does this, but it's really cool. Has anyone played the free-to-play shooter called Warface?
Very briefly. I played like 1 or 2 matches.
On the surface, it seems very generic, but what I love about it is it has this really cool system of, if you want to climb up to this certain vantage point or something like that, you have to get into place. You have to wait for a buddy to get into place in order to boost you up. And so there's a lot of these you can help this guy push this this dumpster into place for some more cover, or someone will kneel down and kind of boost you up to a high vantage point and stuff like that. It's so cool. And I haven't really seen it in other multiplayer shooters before. And it's very basic in its current form, but it's really cool. And I really hope that other shooters kind of adopt that and kind of run with it, and develop it further, because it's such a cool idea.
Like the duo moves stuff.
Yeah. And I love multiplayer shooters that really focus on teamwork, where it's you can't just run in there and just no scope everyone and solo your way to victory. You really got to rely on your teammates, and I think that's an excellent way of doing that. And I just wish more games would adopt that, so because it's really cool when you see it happen. And they even have this little feature where if you're trying to get up to that ledge, right, what you can do is you can put yourself in the spot where you can boost someone up, and then you can decide to either just boost the guy up if you have other plans, or if you want to go up there as well, you can also decide, hey, help me, and then the guy that you just boosted up will then also help pull you up if you decide that. And it's this quick little button while you're waiting for your teammate. So cool. But yeah, it's pretty basic in the way it's implemented now, just because it's just been in that one game from what I understand, and it hasn't really been developed further. So I hope it is.
Yeah, I've seen other games use that to a limited extent, but not really in a multiplayer shooter. I think it's generally more like The Last of Us has moments where you can do the kind of duo moves, but they're more scripted.
Yeah.
Than that. So.
And the problem with Warface is that it's very specific parts. You can't just do it wherever. And I would love to see this system grow to a point where it's any ledge you see, you can just boost a buddy up there. And I think it would add a lot of cool, strategies with your buddies or something. So. And it's probably just because Warface, I think it's successful. I mean, it released in 2014 or something, and it's still trucking along. I don't want to say it's not successful.
From my knowledge, Warface did pretty well.
Really, it did well, but it hasn't. You don't see a whole lot of people talk about it. They don't talk about it the same way they talk about other multiplayer shooters and stuff like that. So, which is a shame because I don't think it's bad. It just looks very generic.
It's got a lot of competition too.
Yeah,
especially in even in the free to play space.
I will say for people who are sick of Destiny but want a game that has a mix of PvE, PvP content and stuff like that, it has a really there's a lot of content to it, but it's like a PvE thing where it's kind of like you're going through got missions where you're going through with a bunch of other buddies, and there's also a class system and stuff like that. So there's a lot of synergy there. So it kind of covers all the bases in that respect. If you're looking for something that kind of has that Destiny kind of variety of content to it, but you're sick of Destiny. So there's that.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about you guys, but there's one mechanic that I'm always, system in general, that I'm always very excited to see, which is any kind of base building in anything. Mm-hmm. And that can be to literal base builder games or city builder games like City Skylines or SimCity, to Skyrim with the homes that you can have. Now, what I really want to see is just I want a first person shooter to go crazy with decorating a home. I want to play Borderlands but be able to customize my sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
or Cyberpunk, where you can really deck out your apartment, which you can. There was one time in Cyberpunk where I picked up a bobblehead and it showed up in my apartment, and that's it. It's really weird.
Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I would love to see especially in a Mass Effect or Outer Worlds style game where you have that ship with your crew that you could customize your ship in. Man, I would get behind that instantly.
Because I'm very anal when it comes to customizing everything. Every option you give me, I will obsess over it. So I would very much be a fan of that for sure.
Yeah. I think the reason I bring it up is I want to see it. I feel like that's such a strong motivator in a lot of MMOs of just having a player house or something that you can go back and customize. So I would really love to see something like that in a game like Destiny, where there's a lack of incentive aside from grinding for higher end tier to grind more. And Warframe has that, which is part of why I love Warframe. Being able to customize your ship is really, really nice, especially when you have the Railjack 2 and you can customize that as well. But just a little bit of customization goes a long way, and I always miss that in a lot of online games.
Speaking of base building, one use of it that I actually really, really liked. Has anyone here played Battlefield 5 for any extended period of time?
No.
It actually has some base building to it.
Really?
So yeah. So what they did, which was really smart, because Battlefield is very much about point control on the map, right? And so what they do now is when you have here's A, here's B or whatever, you can build a bunch of different things. So what it mostly pertains to is you can build sandbags for cover. You can build turrets. You can build ammo and health crates to supply the team and stuff like that. And it's actually super useful. And it, of course, because it's Battlefield, it can be shot down. So you have to build it back up again. But it gives more incentive to capture the points because it helps you resupply your team and also provides you with more cover and stuff like that. It's super, super cool. And they kind of take that next step with it, where there's a lot of perks and a lot of options to kind of increase the building of it and stuff like that. It's super, super cool. And I really hope that they continue with it in Battlefield 6, because I think it's such a cool idea. And again, it kind of gives more purpose to capturing points when you know that it can supply your teammates, not just with points, but also with health, ammo, cover, that sort of thing. So
yeah, that's a lot of fun. One thing that's really cool about Total War game, the Three Kingdoms that I played recently, is it has a similar thing in that before battle you can unlock through your progression tree the ability to put out deployables, which is stuff like a tower that will shoot arrows at your enemies, and just little elements of decision making that isn't smashing an army into another army. That's a lot of fun. just like little bits of customization that are outside of the normal game stuff, and like the ability to put down a giant oil spill that you can then explode is pretty fun. But I think that's always something that I love to see in games. It's just more customization in general. Now
especially because we had such like Halo, especially like Halo Reach, just had such good customization.
Yeah,
and just to not see any modern like shooter that's had that level of customization since is so sad.
It's like, man, I want to try and hunt down that recon helmet, you know? Like,
yeah, I'll even say like 343 basically had the same system in Halo 4. You know, that was about as extensive when it comes to armor. And then I don't know what happened in Halo 5 because it's literally helmet and everything else. You get 2 options. It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then, you know, Call of Duty has started to do it. They have operators that have like operator skins. It's like a very Overwatch way of doing things, which is something, I guess, but it's still not the same. So
yeah, I definitely get that. All right, so we're pretty deep into the show now. Is there any other things that, Alex, do you want to talk about? Any specific things that you've got burning on your mind, or have we covered your bases?
I got everything out of my kettle that was simmering.
Yeah. the simmering kettle of Tifa Lockhart in BT. Actually, there is one other thing I want to give a big shout out to mechanics wise. So I think most of us here are familiar with, at least passingly, with Republic Commando.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So squad control mechanics, like Mass Effect as well, does the same thing of being able to control competent AI characters and like give tactics commands.
That is necessary to progress.
Yeah.
And not just a tacked on thing.
That is a core system.
I'm looking at you, Halo 5, and I'm especially looking at you, Halo 5, because it had the same designer of that system from Republic Commando working on it. And it was very tacked on and served no purpose other than maybe sometimes they'll revive you if you're down. Maybe if their AI is smart enough to get to you.
It's like, man, I love when I get to play. I mean, shooters are great for this because I think they're very conducive to that kind of squad play environment. But in single player, in like other types of games too, like I would love to see that in a Elder Scrolls game. So companions in Skyrim are obviously not quite as useful as they would like to be.
Hey, let's not understate them, okay? They are sworn to carry your burdens. Okay? Let's not understate their importance.
I mean, there are mods that fix it to make it a lot more interesting of a system. But man, I want to see, like in Elder Scrolls 6, I would love to see a more detailed companion control system. Especially if you can have like 2 companions, and I still think Republic Commando has that genius system of most of it can just be done with 1 button that is like contextualized to the action that you want to do. Because like you don't need that fine control all of the time. You just want something that gives you a good sense of being able to command things.
And they have that classic like clone trooper charm with all of the
the dialogue and everything,
which is great. If we are still talking about shooters, I feel like I've talked about this before, just to get the last bits out of the way. When it comes to controls and shooters, I require 2 things, and they both involve sprinting. Right? If you're gonna have sprinting in your shooter, I don't want limited sprint. I think it serves very little purpose for the most part, and I just don't. I think it just kind of breaks the flow of combat, and I just don't think it adds very much. And then also, I hate, and this is a very personal thing, I hate if you're sprinting and you can't reload while you're sprinting, because again, I think it kind of breaks the flow of combat sometimes.
Definitely.
That's very subjective, and I get that. But
although I like Cyberpunk's approach of with sprinting and reloading at the same time. It's something that you can earn.
I'm fine with that.
I think that gives like a really good sense of progression for gunplay.
If you can eventually earn it, that's fine. But if that's not the kind of game you're making, then I just want it by default, because I think it really just breaks up.
And I also find it can be an interesting like class thing in a multiplayer game with different character classes, of certain characters being able to like reload while sprinting and certain not being able to kind of help out with balancing. That can be fun.
Let me make it more clear. If you're making a multiplayer first-person shooter and you have sprinting, have it there in some capacity.
Yeah.
Just in some way. If you completely omit it, I think I'm not a fan. But if it's there in some capacity, then it's fine.
And yeah, I get it. I think the games that can get away with not having it at all are things like Siege can get away with it because it's a much slower paced game.
That's okay.
Yeah, but like if I'm imagining playing Doom, and if Doom had a sprint button that you then couldn't reload while doing.
Oh God, imagine Titanfall.
I would jump off a cliff.
I mean, Titanfall goes to the lengths of like you can unlock a perk for your gun that allows you to sprint and hip fire your gun at the same time.
Yeah,
like that's how dedicated it is to keeping up speed and your like flow and momentum. That it's like you want to hip fire your gun while still sprint. Go ahead, why not?
Have a way.
Go for it, my dude. What I'm saying is, Titanfall is like one of the best multiplayer shooters out there. That's really what I'm getting at.
It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to reinstall it after this, but
we should stream it sometime.
Absolutely.
Have a stream night. It'd be fun.
But yeah, so I think the point we're getting to with a lot of this is that like, just make your game fun. And a lot of that comes down to like the type of people we are. I don't think any of us are the kind of people that are into those hardcore survival games.
Find the best legal way to rip off the Nemesis system, please.
Yeah,
or even like hardcore like competitive stuff either. I usually don't. It becomes less fun for me anyway.
And it is like, if you're making that kind of game, ignoring our advice is probably the right decision.
Oh, for sure.
Because we're not the audience for that. But I think representing a more general faction of people that play video games, like, make your game as fun as possible, and avoid putting systems in that actively detract from players' ability to have fun. And I think a good like
don't be afraid to streamline things. You know, because you can. I've always said there's a difference between something that's streamlined and something that's simplistic, right? And it's a tough balance to reach, but don't be afraid. It's like, oh, don't be afraid to take something, a mechanic or a system that's very like in depth and complicated, and kind of like scaling it back a little bit for the sake of just ease of like your user experience, right?
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
And I do want to give one final example of, because we're talking a lot about streamlining, one system where I think like streamlining is important to like not always do. Back to Valheim. So Valheim is mostly streamlined from survival games. Like it is, you have to worry about vastly less things in that game than you do about most survival games, and I love that. There is one thing that is taken in inspiration of those survival games, and that is the fact that Valheim has teleporters that you can place. You get portals that you can like place down, like teleport through Yggdrasil, do your Viking style transporting across the world. And the fun system with it is that they're linked, so you don't have like one teleporter and it's a bunch of fast travel points. You like create a teleporter that is tagged as like the river base or something, and then you make another teleporter tagged to that same thing. You can build like a teleportation hall. It's really cool. But there's a restriction. The restriction with them is that you cannot teleport metal, ore. You can teleport items made from it, but you can't teleport raw ore. So what that means is that the game is now incentivizing you to go across the world and establish multiple bases, because you need access to those different ores in order to build things. But wherever you go, you can't transport it through teleporters. So it actually makes you want to interact with that system, and especially with the naval system, which is like a fully featured wind-based sailing system, where you can build like a longship that has a massive cargo hold that you can essentially transport that kind of thing to and from your different bases along sea routes. So that's an instance where streamlining that would take away from the game, because you now would have no incentive to ever build more than one base, essentially, because you could just pop down a teleporter wherever you are and go back to your main base and do everything there. But it means in the server I'm playing with a few friends, we have like 4 different large bases that we're each kind of using, and we travel between them to like trade things essentially, because we have to get that ore infrastructure set up in different locations. So it's a lot of fun. It really makes you think about like that kind of resource and where you need it and everything. And it's something that I think like a lot of people when they first play the game are like, this is an awful system. Why would you have this? Like, why do I need to actually build a second base? And then once you do it, it's a lot more fun. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see like the kind of system that is, instead of streamlining, it's making things intentionally more difficult, but for a very good reason. Yeah. All right. Any other last words?
Screw Destiny.
Wow. that was much stronger. Which means we got to do the insult sandwich. So you said screw Destiny. So then Destiny's got some fun enemies, but I really dislike how terrible most of the uniques are. So
screw Mara.
I also hate how they've added I wouldn't even call it a full other enemy type. I would say it's like half an enemy type. Since its launch back in 2014, they added the what are they called, the Scorn, which look too visually similar to Fallen for my taste. So
they're based off of Fallen.
Yeah, but they didn't have to be, is what I'm saying. Like that's just their like lore cop out way of making very similar looking.
Dude, I just want the next Destiny expansion to have floating triangles that I can shoot. Just make me fight geometry.
Wisps of smoke, take it or leave it.
I want them. No one talks about this except for me. I want them to bring back that awesome, what was it, like 10v10 mode when Destiny first launched, way back in 2014. They had like this crazy 10v10 mode with big maps where you could like hack different turrets to attack enemy players, and you could like use your ghost and
I don't remember that at all.
Stuff like that.
I think that's a fever dream, Wyatt. I think you're
no. This is real.
Actually, no, I think I do remember it existing, but I don't remember playing it ever.
It was like larger scale battles. You could like hop on like I think like certain Cabal tanks or like the Scorch tanks, and use like pikes, and even use your own Sparrow and stuff like that. There was like turrets that you can hack, kind of like in Titanfall 1, that kind of thing, and it was super cool. And they got rid of it for some reason, and they got to bring it back. So,
all right. Well, on that note, we did it. We made it through the episode. Happy February after Valentine's to whoever's watching or listening. We forgot it was Valentine's last week, so it's now Valentine's this week.
We also hit all of the major beats of our podcast. We talked about Star Wars. We hated on Destiny.
But what about Mass Effect?
Didn't we briefly?
Yeah, we talked about Mass Effect.
We brought it up. I would say it's a very successful episode.
We even talked about The Last of Us, so we're really covering bases.
Yeah, we did.
We had the classic Destiny does bad, but Warframe does good. Don't worry, Warframe also does some bad, but
praised Titanfall.
That means we're to shoutouts. So, hey, Alex, you look burning with passion for a shoutout.
Damn, the kettle is boiling again, Ryan.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Shout out today would be shout out to my dice for not letting me hit a single one of my PCs this last session. Not once.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my dice for rolling a nat 1 on my initiative check, and also to continually rolling nat 1s before the session, but not happening any more during the session. So that was nice. All right, Wyatt, what you got?
Shout out to the artists that worked on Titanfall 2, because I think it's one of those games that just kind of has aged really well, despite the fact that it has a very realistic look to it. I think it's like sci-fi, almost like J.J. Abrams' aesthetic kind of dates it really, really well,
All right. Well, we did it. We made it through the show. As always, it's available Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m. Eastern on whatever podcast platform you listen to, unless it's a really weird one that's not available where we are. So anything aside from that weird one. 7 a.m. Eastern. Woo, we're going to be doing Games Club soon on some playing games with Brett and I. We're going to be talking about Ace Combat and Project Wingman. And then we also got a Cyberpunk one that we got to schedule for some point, but it's happening. So, that's the end of the show. We did it. Wow. The outro's playing. We made it.
Bye.
Secondary shout out goes to Corridor Crew, who are quickly becoming one of my just favorite YouTubers, or just YouTube things. Yeah, I love those guys to death. I really love them. So, there's that. If you don't watch their content, especially if you're an artist,